Good morning and welcome to Amplify Oshkosh. My name is Javad Ahmed. I will be acting as the moderator for today's panel. Personally, I lead a small business and IT consulting firm in Oshkosh called SmartIS. I'm also a proud member of Amplify Oshkosh and extremely thrilled to be part of today's conversation. Before we get started, please allow me to introduce Amplify Oshkosh. Amplify Oshkosh is a program of Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. It is a community-driven grassroots initiative to increase the awareness of IT within business, education, private and public sectors. The Amplify Consortium is comprised of leaders from all sectors, and over a 6-year history, Amplify has engaged with over 1,000 distinct individuals with its programming and events. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity and thank our annual sponsors. Their support and contribution allow us to remain focused on our mission. At the platinum level support, we have Oshkosh Corporation, the Oshkosh Area School District, and SmartIS. Gold level support comes from Fox Valley Technical College, Bank First, and Stellar Blue Technologies. And silver level support comes from Change Management. In addition, we also receive support from many other businesses and organizations as it relates to our Ideas Amplified events series, our annual big event in the fall, and other Amplify initiatives such as our Leadership Academy. Today's topic is not only exciting, but also very relevant and timely. Cybersecurity has been a key investment area for most organizations for some time. According to Cybercrime magazine, the global security market was worth $3.5 billion in year 2004, whereas in 2017, it had grown over 35-fold to $120 billion and was predicted to exceed $1 trillion cumulative over a 5-year period between 2017 and 2021. This was the prediction before COVID. Digital transformation on a global scale is a major driver for investments in cybersecurity. As the world becomes digital, the access and throughput of transactions continue to grow at an exponential rate. Thus, it becomes highly important for all organizations to open their digital doors to their consumers and customers in a safe and secure manner, no different than how they would have offered physical security at their facilities. Whereas many organizations had prepared multi-year plans to fully implement their digital strategies, COVID is forcing them to accelerate these plans. Hence, the role of cybersecurity within these organizations has become even more critical. The current environment has also created new opportunities for cyber criminals. Deloitte's Cyber Intelligence Center reports that they have observed a spike in phishing attacks, malspasms, and ransomware attacks as attackers are using COVID-19 as bait to impersonate brands, thereby misleading employees and customers. This will likely result in more infected personal computers and phones. Not only are businesses being targeted, end users who download COVID-19 related applications are also being tricked into downloading ransomware disguised as legitimate applications. In today's conversation, we will discuss how the current pandemic forced area organizations to adapt, and how did the sudden and unprecedented change of operations impact their cybersecurity protocols, and how is it holding up to date. Today, we are fortunate to have the cybersecurity leads from 3 leading organizations in the greater Oshkosh area. They represent 3 key business domains, namely manufacturing, higher education, and finance. I will ask them to talk about how their teams were able to cope with sudden change. I will ask them to share their challenges and lessons learned. Without further ado, let me introduce our panel. First, we have Mike Werner, who is the Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer for Oshkosh Corporation. Oshkosh designs and builds the world's toughest specialty trucks and access equipment with over 200 locations in 23 countries. He has led the successful effort to increase Oshkosh's information security maturity worldwide. Mike and His team, the Global Information Security Office, work with executive management across the corporation to reduce information security risk to acceptable levels. His team's role is to be a trusted advisor to the business and its people by identifying and capturing cyber risk, explaining it in business terms, presenting alternatives, and ensuring risk are mitigated, avoided, or accepted. Mike joined Oshkosh Corporation in 2004 and has held various positions of increasing responsibility, leading efforts to standardize, modernize, and centralize the enterprise IT infrastructure. He has also held senior leadership positions at fire and emergency business segments, corporate shared services, and corporate IT infrastructure groups. Next, we have Joe Wetzel. He is the Information Technology Department Chair at Fox Valley Technical College. As a technologist for over 20 years, Joe has broad experiences in application development, mobile, backend services, and security. He has worked in roles as developer, independent contractor, instructor, and currently obviously serving as the department chair for the IT education department at Fox Valley Technical College. Joe is very passionate about security and has been attending hacking conferences for over 20 years. Joe believes security needs to be interweaved in everything we build. Last but not least, we have Paul Schermetzel.
Very good.
Paul serves BankFirst as security officer and BSA specialist. In his role, Paul is responsible for overseeing the day-to-day functions of banks' security, as well as assisting with overseeing Bank Security Act BSA compliance program. Paul joined BankFirst in 2014, following a 28-year career at Manitowoc Police Department. He actually is joining from Manitowoc. Paul's extensive experience is crime prevention, law enforcement, and fraud investigation, supports BankFirst in prevention of financial losses. So as we start with the panel, let me remind all the attendees that you may use the chat feature or Q&A feature to ask your questions. We will reserve some time towards the end for Q&A. So I think we don't have Mike at this time. So we will jump to Mr. Joe Wetzel to kick off our conversation. So Joe, you know, online classes are not new. However, switching entire student body and faculty to online media must have, you know, presented some unique challenges. Could you please share how the college had to adjust to deliver all content via online, and did that cause any system issues? And how are you protecting your systems and networks for potential breaches?
Absolutely. So we have been teaching online classes for quite some time. The one thing that was very fortunate is we do have an online system, Blackboard, which is our content management system for students and faculty. So all classes already had that in place, which was in our favor. Blackboard was hosted externally. Our content management system was provided on the back end so that they had the ability to scale up as needed. So a couple of things kind of worked in our favor there. Also, we have a VM environment set up. So a lot of the students are currently working on their own virtual machines. So if you think about like when you went to college, you've got the lab machines and you work on the lab machines. We've been migrating a lot of that into the virtual environment. So that way students can access all of their homework and everything from home using a VM. So a lot of my classes, they're in the classroom. They're on a lab machine in that college classroom, but they're actually working on a virtual machine. So that way all of their work can kind of follow with them. And it also helps the security of the college. So that way we don't have to loosen up those lab machines. We have everything put into a virtual environment. So that gave us the ability to kind of transition a little bit easier. our virtual environment is set up in a way that's already kind of locked down because crazy students do crazy things. I mean, you have the difference between having an employee that if their credentials leak out or they share their credentials, they have the risk of being fired. Where a student, if theirs gets out or they click on a phishing link, it's not. I don't know how much they really care about that breach. So we already have to keep that all segregated, locked down, put into VLANs. So our virtual environment is completely separate than the college's virtual environment. So we have that already split into two. So all of that kind of worked in our favor. So they're already kind of working in a sandbox that if somebody does access one of their virtual machines remotely, they really can't do anything with it. So it really limits the damage. So they may lose homework, they may get their machine deleted, but it's not like payroll is going to be affected. But we did have significant challenges. So you think about the way that college works. Certain students say, hey, I want to take an online class. Great, no problem. Some students understand they learn better sitting in a classroom. So now you have that classroom type of environment. And now all of those students are being told, hey, we're not going to do this right now. We're moving you all into a different environment. So we had another format called virtual, which is kind of a hybrid. It's online, but you have face-to-face instruction with an instructor that meets with those students weekly, like a traditional classroom. So we really have been working with that for about a year, the virtual format, but it never caught on. Like students didn't necessarily understand it. Instructors really didn't have a lot of opportunity to be working in that format just because students never registered for those classes. So now all traditional classes got converted into this kind of virtual where it's a hybrid. So all of a sudden, everyone had to quick scale up, understand how to teach this. So when the pandemic hit in March, it was over spring break, and they extended spring break by an additional week, just so that way instructors have a week to kind of learn how they're going to get all of their content converted over, which they did, and it worked, but everybody kind of did things a little bit different, so with the face-to-face, some people used Zoom, some people used Microsoft, has Microsoft Teams, some people used built into Blackboard was Collaborate. So it really was up to the instructor. It's like, okay, you're going to now do this. You never really had the opportunity to do it, but you're going to do it right now. And so one of the main college principles is adapt to change. Kind of that whole being agile, kind of go with it. And this was one of those experiences where all the students, all the instructors really had to be agile. They had to embrace this change and kind of figure stuff out. So like in the spring environment, I went with Blackboard Collaborate just because it's Blackboard. I already had all the students in Blackboard and I thought that might be a good tool to use. All the tools are different, so I didn't know all the tools. It's like, and I'm sure at this point, everybody's gotten pretty familiar with Teams and Zoom and trying to get that where, 4 or 5 months ago, this was something we just didn't know a lot about. So that was one of the big challenges, just getting all of the instructors to handle their face-to-face class and do it in more of an online approach. The other thing is, it's just dealing with the students. I mean, not all students have the environments that we have. They don't have high-speed internet. They don't have a really good home computer. And just trying to figure out how do we get the computers into the hands of these students? How do we, ensure that everybody can log in, get access, and be able to have a good, rich learning environment. The other challenge is certain software has hardware components to it. All right, so not all classes could be taught online. So certain licensing prevents the use of a virtual machine. Certain software has like a hardware dongle that's connected to it, and it has to run on that physical machine. So that really became a challenge. Luckily, our IT department had the ability to use Citrix and basically tunnel students into classrooms, and they worked that out really, really quickly, thankfully. So that was one of the things that we saw as kind of an area that we could maybe enhance. So So you have a physical classroom with computers in it. So what we're doing now after this experience, kind of hindsight, that we want to build a lab that's not a physical lab in a classroom, but let's create something that we're calling a Citrix Lab. So we're going to take physical machines, put them in a data center, separate them off, have it have a staff image with all the hardware dongles and everything they need to access the physical hardware. And then students will have the ability to basically securely and safely tunnel into the network through Citrix and access those machines like a virtual machine or a remote desktop kind of environment. So now they're working in the college on the hardware, but still getting the benefit of having that online experience. So yeah, a lot of it was just really, ramping up, adapting to change and trying to figure out what tools. And I don't think we're solid. I mean, so everyone picked different tools, and now for fall semester coming up, people are kind of saying, hey, what did you do? How did it work? What did you like? What didn't you like? Because all these tools aren't equal. I mean, so if we have a class, we need to archive the class. If somebody has a commitment and they can't make that physical time slot, it's nice to have that recorded, being archived, where some tools, record it very quickly, archive it very quickly, no pain for the instructor. Where other tools, you click on archive and it may take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to actually take all of the video from that class and then convert it into a format that students can then easily get. So yeah, those are kind of some of the challenges that we went through. I think you're muted, Javad.
Yeah, I put myself on mute. So, thank you. So I do realize, some were a little bit better positioned for, remote connectivity, and however, the scale in every circumstance was not predicted. So I'm very pleased to learn that, how Foxbury Tech has been able to improvise quickly by bringing in new technology or different methodologies to be able to incorporate and to make sure that the delivery of content is not compromised. So with that, I must apologize to Mike. I did not see him on the he has joined in via phone, so I didn't see him as a video. So I assumed that he wasn't there. So apologize, Mike. But with that, I'm actually going to turn over to Mike and ask him to kind of share his story and his use case as it relates to the current situation at Oshkosh Corporation, especially Oshkosh Corporation being a large global organization with established business in multiple countries, as I understand, in about 23 countries. So tell us how your team was able to prepare your organization for these unprecedented circumstances, and please share any challenges and opportunities that you came across along the way. Mike, we are not able to hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now. Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I was having trouble with my audio. From Oshkosh Corporation's point of view, it was really a matter of scale for us. So when the work from home was issued, we basically had to scale up our systems. We started to take a look at doing that within the time frame around January, knowing what was going on over in China and what our China locations were actually seeing. So for us, it was really just a matter of, we had the secured connections, the secure remote capabilities in place. It was a matter of purchasing additional hardware where, the infrastructure team did a great job with that, and licenses to support that work from home effort. And, we're at a point now where we were fortunate. We had upgraded some of the key bandwidth locations, specifically in our data centers back last fall. So we had capacity to be able to support the 6 to 7-fold increase in remote workers. And then I think the one challenges that we had was more centered around getting education out to individuals around secure working practices from home. We saw quite an uptick in phishing attacks with COVID as the lure. So we had to get information out to all of our team members to make sure they could recognize what those were, especially in the early days when there was a lot of misinformation floating around, and false websites were being stood up that purportedly tracked COVID cases. So that was where we spent a lot of time working with the team members to make sure that they were able to identify those things and report them so we could block them. We did see an uptick in the traditional attacks that do come on the internet, specifically related to the fact that our threat surface increased with so many remote workers. But like I said, it was really a matter of scale from a technical perspective. And we were able to do that effectively by starting early. And the second part was just a really concerted educational campaign for all of our team members so they would know how to secure their working from home environment, and then also what to look for from phishing and how to protect their personal items, and also pass that information on to their friends and family.
So Mike, Oshkosh Corporation being a global organization heavily dependent on a continuous, uninterrupted supply chain across the globe, you are also dealing on a routine basis with outside vendors and customers. Have there been any unique circumstances as you were dealing with vendors and suppliers?
I think that the suppliers and vendors, the purchasing groups did a fantastic job of working with those to keep the parts and supplies coming in. Obviously, the work from home order, and then some of the staggered things that were done for personnel working on the manufacturing lines. But there wasn't any real dramatic impact thanks to the great work that the purchasing group did working with the suppliers across the globe in each of the segments. I think everything was proceeding pretty well, and we were able to continue to produce the vehicles. So,
well, that's wonderful. And then one other aspect of Oshkosh Corporation is their defense division. I would assume the defense division is somewhat more secured in their access to systems as opposed to the others, and may have some unique regulatory compliance issues as well that they have to be always dealing with. With remote work and with the situation around COVID, how has the defense division been dealing with the changes?
The defense division does have some unique requirements. However, from a remote work securing the team members' perspective, those requirements are equal across the enterprise. So the controls, the technical controls and stuff that we put in place, not only do they meet the requirements of specific contractual items within the defense group, but they also cover, out to all the other segments and businesses within the group, because the large majority of those are best practices that we put in place many years ago to secure all team members in Oshkosh's intellectual property.
Great. So I'm assuming that even the same thing would apply on the localization aspect, meaning that you have, obviously your teams all over the world, so you may have some localization country dependent or, state or whatever, that you still are adhering to the most common best practices that you can implement across all entire Oshkosh Corporation. Is that true, or is there anything specific that needs to be addressed based on localization challenges?
There are always, there are three main drivers to our cybersecurity posture, and it's pretty much the same for any company. You'll have contractual requirements, you'll have regulations that you have to apply, local or regional regulations, and then the third one is the threats, the cyber threats that are out there. We take into account all three across all the business segments and look for common ground and being able to meet those. And we'll take, sometimes there are specialized approaches that have to be taken based on, contractual requirements for all the regulations, or even in some cases the specific cyber threats that we may see, such as targeted phishing in a particular region centered around a particular app that may be used in that region. So yeah, we're constantly having to adjust and balance those and then extend them out across the enterprise as applicable to reduce risk.
Well, thank you, Mike. So let me remind everyone that to please add your questions to the chat box available on your screen, and we will try and reserve some time at the end to ask any specific questions that come from the audience as well. So with that, I'm actually going to turn over to Paul, and I'm not going to try to use your last name. But digital or otherwise, financial institutions are always a target for criminals. Hence, financial institutions are always trying to stay a step ahead. Has the increase in online activity, especially online commerce and banking, resulted into additional threats for you in your sector, and specifically in Wisconsin, if you can talk about that, or within specifically targeting your bank policies and procedures, if you can answer from that perspective.
Well, thank you, Javad. First, I want to thank you for inviting BankFirst to participate with Amplify Oshkosh and the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. It's always a pleasure to speak with other entities regarding what we do at BankFirst. So again, thank you for the invite. Regarding cybersecurity and the financial institution, the banks that have been experiencing, we really have not seen an increase of fraudulent activity towards the bank itself. What we have seen is a much more fraudulent activity to our customer base. I would say our customer base, the elderly has been hit hard with the COVID. We constantly see news releases, and we get periodicals reference communicating with our customers on safeguarding their assets. One thing is that a lot of the elderly do not use online, and they're not very savvy with the computers. So once they do start getting involved, they take the advice of scrupulous individuals, and we find that those are the individuals that get targeted the most. One thing we've also seen is an uptick in transactions that are coming in from other states, from unemployment entities, where the state unemployment compensation has been coming in as a credit into new accounts. These accounts were created by individuals knowingly or unknowingly participating as a money mule for the criminal entities. So we've been monitoring that real close. We've had a few cases, less than 10, but those are some of the things that we are seeing on our local level. As far as the bank is concerned, ACH transactions, we do close to $7 billion every year in transactions in amounts. So we're well prepared for those transactions and the outside influences that try to attack our systems. So we feel confident that those are recognized immediately and snuffed out as our systems can handle that amount of transactions and any influences that may come in to try to attack those systems. Again, we try to communicate with our communities where our banks are located as best as possible, our website, our periodicals that we send out to our customer base. And because we are community-based, our customers are well known to our frontline staff. So any abnormalities on the accounts of these individuals are addressed with them, because we do have such a personal relationship with our account holders, that anything that is unusual, we bring it up to the account holders, or perhaps family members that are on the account, so we can address those problems and try to get them the help that they need.
Well, great.
I know one of the questions you asked to be prepared for was the work at home for our employees, and we did see an increase in that. We were well prepared for that as well. As you know, banks are constantly under scrutiny regarding security, and our infrastructure was already set in place due to our our risk assessments that we do on an annual basis. And we are always looking at ways to improve the work at home environment for our employees. Many of the employees do have bank laptops, and they do work at home. We saw an increase of about 25 employees that were able to work at home, but our network was able to work around the increased workload, I guess you want to say. So we didn't have any increase in security issues. We felt confident that the systems we had in place were competent to handle the extra workload.
Good. All right. So with that, I'm actually going to once again remind all the attendees to see if they have any questions. They can put it into the Q&A or chat box that is available on the screen. And we're going to continue on with more of a informal, open discussion now with the panelists. And I will actually go to Joe first and ask him just now, kind of outside of the scope of COVID only, but generally speaking, as we talked about, that cybersecurity is a hot topic, right? It has this whole decade has been very focused on that. And as I talked about earlier, that as the digital transactions or digitalization or digital transformation, however you frame it, is increasing, and so is the responsibility that comes on the professionals to offer secured environment. How is that demand being satisfied by the college, or has there been any more demand that you're seeing just from students wanting to get into such programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to note, I mean, all of us panelists really have been doing the right stuff for the last 5-10 years, and really got us to a point where we're positioned so this wasn't like a devastating shutdown thing. So I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, people are moving in the right direction. Think about 10 years ago, things were horrible, so yeah. So as far as the college goes, we've been actually teaching like ethical hacking and different security classes for quite some time. It's got to be at least 10 years that we've had security classes weaved in. Probably about 3 years ago, we started a new associate degree that's just information security associate degree that's specific to cybersecurity. In there, we teach quite a bit of different classes with ethical hacking, OS security, risk assessment, monitoring, security monitoring, network security, incident response, so those kind of classes. The thing that's interesting with that degree is we actually partnered up with criminal justice as well, because they're dealing with a lot of the fraud detection, stuff like that. So They've got computer crime investigation. They've got like data recovery. So that way students are taking the security degree along with law professionals that are in that same boat. So there's definitely been a huge uptick in interest in that degree, partially just because everybody's been talking for quite some time. Hey, you know, we got to deal with this. This is a big deal. So students are gearing up, and yeah. So we've got, you know, a degree in place, and we've got a lot of classes. And to be honest, even all our networking classes and software classes, we're getting security weaved into that.
Mm-hmm. So we do have a question from Mandy Pollack, and I'll probably I'll ask everyone, but I will start with Paul, because I think he touched on some of those aspects, which is, what new social engineering tactics are you seeing that people should be aware of?
Well, what we see in the fraud area through the Bank Secrecy Act, our department that I work with, along with the security, is to review accounts of individuals where we see, again, strange happenings in their accounts out of the normal banking pattern for our customers. We get a number of alerts on a weekly and monthly basis based on specific transactions that our customers are doing. Our team looks at all of those transactions and try to figure out what's going on with the account holder. Why is this account all of a sudden taking out large sums of cash, which is unusual? Perhaps maybe purchasing gift cards from Walmart's, Walgreens, any of these other big box stores where gift cards are being purchased. You always know that you look at the age group, and if somebody's buying, you know, several $1,000s worth of gift cards, what is happening with that account holder? So those are the things we look into. And again, as I stated, the frontline staff will work with frontline staff working with that customer to see what's going on. And sometimes they reveal that perhaps they got a call from one of their grandchildren, or a longtime friend, or somebody that obviously did their homework and knows through Facebook or what other social media that this might be an easy target for them. So we see a lot of grandparent scam or emergency scam, and that's usually how it starts. So then we work with that customer to find out what the real reason is that they've seen perhaps credits coming into their account that are unusual, maybe a wire transfer or another ACH credit. And we'll work with that customer. If it's something that we feel the customer knew well in advance, that they wanted to be a part of this scheme, then we of course sever ties with that customer. So social media has a big impact with our frauds and schemes that we see on a weekly, monthly, daily basis here at the bank. A grandparent scam, emergency scam, those are most likely the most frequent ones that we see with our customer base.
If it is too good to be true, it is not true.
It sure is, yes. But again, we work with, yeah, like Joe Wetzel said, you know, law enforcement do have investigators, teams of investigators that work cyber crimes. Here at the Manitowoc, or in the city of Manitowoc, we work with the Manitowoc Police Department closely, along with the Sheriff's Department. If we do have a situation where we feel somebody had criminal intent, we will pursue that through law enforcement. I shouldn't just say Manitowoc, but throughout the jurisdictions that we have our financial institutions located. We work with those law enforcement jurisdictions to try to recoup those losses and go after these folks criminally.
Oh, great. Mike, I will, as we are now starting to come back to work and reopening, and there still is a looming threat of different places, I know California or Florida, they're already talking about or have already kind of shut down again. This on again, off again type of setup, certainly with an organization of your scale, is going to, you know, cause a lot of challenges. So how, on a routine basis, your team is keeping up with those, what is being mandated at one level, and then how you are, making adjustments for your employee base?
I would say that, the nature of the startups, shall we say, and getting back as the various regions and states get back to work, we keep a good pulse on what's happening in each area. And I think that a lot of it just starts with being able to maintain the environment as it exists today with, the majority of the people about 2 months ago working from home, because we don't want to, it's hard to adjust to each individual region, city, state, area. So we just want to keep that same level of capacity and diligence that we had at the beginning of this, probably all the way through until it does return to some type of normal when a vaccine is out there and widely distributed.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys see this more of a permanent adjustment in your infrastructures and your policies and protocols, as opposed to be a temporary adjustment?
I think from the standards of, information security and the like, again, it's just a matter of scale for us. Mm-hmm. And working with closely with the infrastructure groups. I think that, as far as any long-term, or that's all still, it seems to, everybody's just, pretty much going, the environment changes so much due to the startups and stops, as we were recently talking about, that I think that's where everybody's focused on right now, is just, how to make sure we can continue to be productive working in this new environment as it exists today.
Good. So, Joe, back to you. You were talking about, hackathons and, ethical hacking and all of that. So at the college level, or just in the education realm, what are the different things that are out there that one can take advantage of to be able to educate themselves in terms of what's going on in just general industry, and what are the best practices for personal sake and for business sake?
Yeah, so as far as the students go, if you're a student thinking about being a student, join clubs. We have an AITP club, which is great, and gives them a lot of exposure. And within the club, we also do conferences. And for anybody that's just attending this webinar, I strongly recommend going to conferences. We do 2 a year. So right in Milwaukee, we've got Cyphercon, great conference, just focuses on security. We also do GERCon, which is Michigan. Not that far of a drive, so we try to hit 2 conferences a year. There's so many conferences, and there's so many good conferences. So for students, just having the ability to talk with other industry professionals, to hear people be excited about security, it gets them more engaged, and they realize that, hey, this is really important. The other thing we do is we do competitions. So we're heavily involved with the National Cyber League, NCL. And the thing that's nice with the National Cyber League, so it's a competition. It's like a Jeopardy style capture the flag event, where they have different categories and different challenges, and the students have to kind of solve these challenges to get points, and then they get ranked against other colleges. So the students really get engaged with it. And the thing that's nice is the categories are so broad that pretty much every student, if you're a software developer, if you're into networks, if you're just into like wireless or password cracking, anything like that, they get exposure to these tools. They understand how to do things. So yeah. So there's a lot of ways. Even for individuals that you're just interested, there's even online capture the flag events that you can participate in, and it's just fun and you learn.
Mm-hmm. Paul, you touched on the aspect of education and communication, right? So, what, from your standpoint as businesses in general, they should be doing to be able to ensure that their brands are protected and then they have truthful information that is being associated with their brands. And then what, I think Mike also talked about, education of employees. And I'll put this question to all of you, is to say, what are the specific advice that you may have for businesses and individuals, but also, some of the things that you may be doing that we can take, a learning lesson from.
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things I did want to touch on today was some of our business customers that were compromised through the email, or what's called a business email compromise scheme. This is where somebody within a company or a business receives an email from what appears to be the business owner or the president of the company, giving instructions to that person. The person is probably involved in the accounting department and responsible for wiring funds or paying out the day-to-day operations of costs for that business. And what we did see was we did have a few businesses that fell victim to the business email compromise scheme. When it comes to wires, the Bank First Wire and administration group came up with much more precautionary measures regarding businesses and the wires that they are about to send out. So there's a lot more communication going on between the frontline staff of our branches along with the wire department to make sure that that wire request is scrutinized, and to make sure that the request has been done through the proper channels. So we've taken steps along with the businesses that use our wire service to educate them on these business email compromise schemes to make sure that they don't fall victim. We have not had one of those schemes now for quite some time since we beefed up our security on that. So also I want to add that our website, Bank First website, has plenty of articles regarding cybersecurity and overall security of our account holders. And I encourage our customers to constantly look at the news releases that we put out, the press releases regarding safeguarding their assets. One more item I want to talk about for businesses is our positive pay program. This deals with business checks. Business account holders that still use paper checks and go through by paying their bills, sending them through the U.S. Postal Service. Perhaps they have their business in a more rural area of their communities. The scenario normally is where they put those checks in an envelope, they mail them to the business that they own those funds to. And what we have experienced where the criminals will steal these checks out of mailboxes, and now they have a good check basically to wash and use to their advantage. So we have worked with many of our businesses to use the positive pay program, and that seems to work well as well. So our electronic banking team works closely with businesses to make sure that they are set up in a much more secure fashion regarding payments between businesses versus using the old paper check style.
Thank you. And then just for everybody's information, Paul was kind enough to share a few links with us earlier on. So we have added those links in the chat. So you should be able to click on them and get some additional information.
Javad, if I could interject, one of the links is to the FBI's IC3 program, which is if you are involved in identity theft. Obviously, if one of our customers comes in and indicates that they have been compromised, we advise them to file a complaint with the local police department where the jurisdiction, where the incident has been taking place, but then also file a report with the FBI through the IC3 program.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I'm actually going to go to Mike again and just ask him. He talked about phishing attacks and fraud and those types of circumstances that are coming into businesses. So from a corporate standpoint, would you have any advice for businesses?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, if you don't have it today on your systems, your externally facing systems, such as a lot of companies will use, not large companies, but smaller companies will use like Gmail and Yahoo sometimes for their email accounts, or even Microsoft 365. If you don't have it turned on, turn on two-factor authentication. And that also applies to your home email too, from a public service announcement perspective. If hackers get into your email, they basically will own most of your digital life. All the accounts that you have set up through its financial, banking, investments, social media, rely heavily on email for any particular type of reset. And if someone gets a hold of your account and it's really easy to do because you don't have two-factor authentication turned on or multi-factor authentication, it's really hard to get your life back. That's number one. Number two is there was a discussion previously about the seniors, older generations are not too digital savvy, but I like to call it stake your claim is pretty important. If you don't have digital accounts set up for banking, at least you've set something up and two-factor authenticated it, or with the Social Security Administration, or with any of those entities that have a presence out on the web. Someone else might do it for you, and it's probably someone that you don't want to do it for you. So at a minimum, to help protect your family and your friends, you should look at those accounts. And if someone is exclusively just doing, paper checks in a bank, they probably ought to look at least at establishing an account at the bank online and setting up two-factor authentication to prevent the risk of someone doing it for them and then having their information and, potentially losing money or identity, as it could be the case with the Social Security Administration if you don't have an account set up there already.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. Joe, we have a question for you by Barb, and she wants to know how a student can attend. Do you have to be a student to attend Cybercon?
No, it's actually open to the general public. Anybody can join Cyphercon, or it's not even join. It's just a conference. You're just going, you're attending. It's in Milwaukee. Yeah.
And then where can you find more information about it?
Yeah, so if you go to cyphercon.org, or actually, I'm going to put the link out in the chat. So it's cyphercon.com. And I just put that out, said the chat. So if you want to look into it, it's just a fun event that they have different speakers. You can go to it, and you get a cool digital badge that is so like not last year got canceled, but the year before, everybody got like a badge that was a phone, and they actually had a POT system set up. So randomly your badge would ring, and you'd be like, "Hello," and you could talk to other attendees. They would have like war dialing and different back doors and stuff like that. So it's just kind of fun. It's a fun event.
All right. So I think we're coming to the last 5 minutes of the hour. So at this time, I will just ask each of the panelists to say if there's anything that you would like to stress upon, highlight, something that I have not asked or the audience haven't asked, but you would like to kind of make sure that gets through, please, speak up.
So one thing that I would just kind of talk a little bit about, I mean, the multi-factor authentication is perfect. You know, I mean, I think that's a really good way going. One thing the college does that I think is really smart is they actually test the employees. So they will craft phishing emails. Phishing is the low-hanging fruit. For whatever reason, this is the only thing the hackers really have been focusing a ton of energy on in the last few years. So the more you can train your employees on how to identify what they should click on and what they shouldn't click on. So employees actually get phishing emails from our IT department. And if they click on it, then they also get an email with a link to some training that they need to attend to help them identify. So the more you can just educate your employees on what is good and what's not good. So that would be the one takeaway I would want to throw in there really quick.
Yeah, I think, you know, Paul, the email fraud that you were talking about, you know, we at SmartIS, we received such an email, and our operations manager was smart enough, and her only reason, because that kind of gets into that social hacking as well, you know, she responded back to me because basically the email was from me to her to wire money to XYZ. And she asked a question back to me, where's the contract? And I responded right away, apparently, with a contract, and says, Javad never responds that quickly. so that was the one you know, to kind of get to know your peers as well. I think it's partly, it's all of the, you know, nothing is in isolation, right? So we need to understand personalities and how we deal with it. Otherwise that's where the gaps are created and people get through to them. So I think for me, it was a very educational, it was very informative. I really want to thank all the panelists and the attendees that joined this talk. And if there's you know, any further questions that anyone has, please feel free to visit the amplifyoshkosh.com or the chamber website, and, you know, drop in your question in the contact us or any of those areas, and we'll try to get back to you accordingly. And with that, I think I will try and say once again, thank you and have a wonderful day. I think the day is starting to clear up a little. And then just stay safe.
Thank you, Javad.
Thanks, Javad.
Thank you, everyone.